The 90s was the decade of attitude, and nobody had more attitude than Sonic the Hedgehog. Created to be the exact opposite of Nintendo's Mario, Sonic was fast, cool, and in your face. And for a while, kids just ate it up. And other game companies took note. And where there's success, there's always going to be imitators. And where there are imitators, there are always going to be pretty lame ones. So today, we're going to be looking at 10 of the lamest 90s mascots that time tried to forget.
Awesome, Kickstarter machine knows what.
I'm awesome.
There comes a point where a trope reaches its peak. Just can't get any worse than this. Awesome Possum Kicks Dr. Machino's Butt was a game released in 1993 on the Genesis and Master Drive by Tengen. The game is a totally radical, educational game. Yeah, Awesome Possum is full of environmental activist elements with fun activities such as picking up bottles and answering questions about the environment. Like most games on this list, Awesome Possum is a blatant Sonic ripoff, with the main character himself speeding through the levels and fighting a bad scientist who makes robots and fucks the planet up. The game's main claim to fame was its annoying voice acting.
Awesome. Alright.
But even Bubsy beat him to the punch before that, so it really has nothing going for it. The funny thing about Awesome Possum is that they would have done a better job saving the environment if they didn't even bother making the game. Given all the boxes and instruction manuals printed out for this game, Crappy Games Wiki did find one redeeming quality in the game. However, you do actually kick Dr. Machino's butt at the end of the game, so at least the title wasn't lying.
Awesome, Kickstarter machine knows what.
I'm awesome.
And action.
He may be small, but he's a big pain for his enemies. The same goes for his audience. Bug is a bug. What kind of bug? I don't know. The game doesn't say. He's green and's got long feelers and wings, so you'd think that he's a cricket or something. But he's also got a stinger like a bee. So what is he? Who knows? Who cares? We've got one-liners to listen to. Appearing on the Sega Saturn in 1995, Bug was an actor in Hollywood looking for his big break, which comes in the form of a lead role in a film called, Bug. The game was your standard side-scrolling platformer with the ability to kill your enemies by jumping on their heads. The thing that set it apart were the 3D levels that allowed the player to go in any direction they wanted. Since Bug is a sly, eyebrow-raising, sleazy Hollywood type, it's only natural that he'd be spouting annoying one-liners at every chance he got, including every time he kills an enemy. Despite aging poorly and being among the most annoying mascots ever made, Bug was actually pretty popular back in the day. Popular enough to almost get a TV series made. This fell through naturally, but it's entirely possible that Bug would have been around much longer than he initially was. In fact, Steven Spielberg himself even said, "This is the character. This is the character that is gonna do it for the Saturn," at CES in January 1995. He was wrong, of course, but it's still insane to think that a character this lame could instill such an insane amount of hope in people. Looking further back into the history of Bug, it's easy to see where people got its hope from. Bug was not just a Sonic ripoff, he was actually Sonic himself at one point. In its earliest stages, Bug was planned to be a sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog proposed by Real-Time Associates and Sega of America. However, Sega of Japan learned of the project and shot it down immediately. They gathered the remains and created Bug, the savior of the Sega Saturn. Too bad it was dead in the water as soon as the N64 came out.
Taken at face value, your diet routine seems to have gotten brown. Why not come out of the shadow and into the light of Diet 7-Up?
Cool Spot first appeared in 1987 as the official mascot of 7-Up. While he appeared in many advertisements for the soft drink, many people remember him thanks to his venture into video games. This fucking circle had not one, not two, not three, but 4 video games. 4 fucking video games. All 4 games were developed by Version Interactive, which no longer exists. Unlike most characters on this list, Cool Spot thankfully cannot talk. We don't have to listen to one-liner after one-liner. All we get is little high-pitched squeaking noises, which is rather surprising as that goes against the stereotypical cool and edgy approach. 2 of Spot's games were not initially his own, but were actually just rebranded ports of pre-existing games. Spot the Cool Adventure was a Game Boy port of the McDonald's game McKids, and Spot the video game was a rebranded version of the game Infection. While Cool Spot himself isn't that lame, it's painfully obvious that he was meant to be the most radical dot in advertising thanks to his design. Cool Spot was never seen again after 1997, leaving 7-Up without the one thing that set them apart, a mascot. They now live on in the background, forever to be seen as the soda you'll only drink at a restaurant if they don't have Sprite or Sierra Mist.
If you had jalapenos and beans for every meal, you'd have an atomic butt blast too. Boogerman for Sega Genesis.
While the 90s was littered with attitude and cool characters, let's not forget that it's also a decade of edgy and grossed out humour. This is the same decade that gave us characters such as Mega Babies and the Brother Grunts. But after all, it only makes sense that game companies would try to cash in on the success of grossed out humour with their own take on it, in the form of yet another incredibly crap mascot, and that mascot is none other than Boogerman. He has an alter ego who goes by the name Snotty Ragsdale, and his goal is to save the world from pollution. God. To achieve this, he goes through toilet after toilet, ending up in different worlds made of shit. Yep, your typical 90s gross out game in a nutshell. I mean, for fuck's sake, he literally digs through shit to find power-ups. I mean, come on, who does that, fictional or not? The gameplay was decent, but it wasn't noteworthy enough to stick around and turn anything worthwhile. Guess kids just weren't really interested in playing as a disgusting old bald man that claws through shit. It just goes to show you that developers sometimes just don't have a fucking clue. Boogerman led dormant for years until 2013, where creators Mike Strangey and Chris Tremel launched a shitty Kickstarter campaign for a next-gen HD sequel.
For those of you that aren't familiar with the game, it's a platform game where you play as the superhero Boogerman. In order to defeat your enemies, you use your superpowered bodily functions and fluids to do things like pick, flick,
hawk loogies,
burp,
and fart your way through a disgusting world known as Dimension Excrement.
Roughly 5 years ago, Mike and I started talking about a Boogerman remake. Unfortunately, at the time, it wasn't really feasible for us to go off and develop the game on our own, as making games can be pretty expensive.
Now with Kickstarter and your support, it's now a possibility.
Oh shit. Perhaps the world just wasn't ready for Boogerman in HD, and perhaps it will never be.
This one is just ugly. Somehow its design is even more aesthetically displeasing than Boogerman. Rocky Rodent is a rather obscure game released for the Super Nintendo in 1993 by Irem. They don't really have a notable catalog of games. We've got stuff like Hammer and Harry and Kung Fu Master. Now, Rocky is a rodent, obviously. What kind of rodent? Well, who can really say? But, get this, he can also run really fast. Now, where have I heard that one before? Probably Pikachu. Now, to be fair, the gameplay isn't entirely focused on his speed, but rather his ever-changing hairstyles that grant him special abilities. The game follows Rocky as he tries to save a restaurant owner's daughter from the mob, as cartoon mascots usually do. Thankfully, Rocky doesn't speak or have any dumb one-liners. His edginess and cool attitude comes from his ugly appearance and blatant attempt to rip off Sonic the Hedgehog. The problem with a lot of these games is that there are good ideas for games in there, but the developers slapped a mascot with an attitude on the front of them, hoping that it would sell more with it. Ironically, the mascots were the thing that caused the games to fall into obscurity. There's a reason nobody remembers Rocky Rodent. Not even a real reason to hate him. He's not annoying or unbearable, he's just forgettable. And in the end, isn't that kind of worse?
So they whisked me away to Interrogation 101. They play rough. Start giving me the business. I give a little back.
Gex the Gecko is the staple James Bond parody character of 90s video games. Suave, rich, and incredibly lame by today's standards. Despite being based after James Bond, they certainly took some creative liberties, such as him being a gecko and having an ungodly amount of one-liners.
Welcome to the jungle! Let's get back to the mystery van!
What do you mean Darth Vader's my father?
Looks like someone had too much chili at Wendy's.
Looks like Beetlejuice threw up.
Me, Gex, you, Jane. I'm not in Kansas anymore.
Hey, look! SNL!
All this because of Rosebud?
We've lost visual cancer. That's as much fun as being Mike Tyson's cellmate on Valentine's Day.
Holy shit, most of those kids probably don't even know what half those references even meant. Over the course of the series, Gex became more and more of a horn dog, and eventually, by Gex 3, he became more interested in sex than TV.
My big, strong Gexy has done it again. Love those bulging biceps.
These biceps are just the beginning, my fair maiden. Speaking of bulging... Did I just say that out loud?
Yep, I'm afraid you did.
I'm a bad boy.
And just started quoting mostly Austin Powers.
Let's get ready for the ultimate gecko weapon, baby, yeah!
Despite being kind of lame and annoying at times, Gex has been held in high regard by many gamers and has become a cult classic over the years. Many fans even petitioned him to be included in the PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale. This, of course, never happened because he's lame, but the future of Gex isn't all doom and gloom. In 2015, Square Enix announced that it will allow the developers to create a new game based on some old Eidos IPs, including Gex, so who knows? Maybe Gex will show up again someday. Then he can make shitty references to movies like The Avengers or the Emoji Movie.
Whoa, big fella. You got a name, Leadhead? Call me Woody. Wild Woody.
The fuck is this? This is a pencil. A fucking pencil. Wild Woody is a game about a pencil who likes to make horrifying faces in poorly done FMV cutscenes. He was brought to life by a totem pole in order to save the world from his evil totem brothers. Why he decided to bring a pencil to life for this, I haven't got a fucking clue. Maybe it was the only thing lying around. The game's shit. But if there's one good idea in there, and that is that Woody has the ability to draw necessary items to use in the game. But it's executed so poorly, and the controls are awful. Woody's main method of attacking is erasing his enemies by rubbing his ass on their face. That's pretty weird, and yeah, I get it, I know what they're going for. He's a pencil, and pencils have rubbers at the end of them, so it wouldn't really raise too many eyebrows initially, but pencil or not, it's pretty sexually suggestive for a game, a kid's game, to do something like this. It's fucking weird. Stop it. The game was not received well at all, with many reviewers stating that Woody comes up short in every single department.
Woody's got the rock and time's running out. He's at the top of the key. 3, 2, 1. He shoots. It's good! Thanks again, Woody. I'll see you next time the world needs saving. Yeah, only if we sell a zillion units.
Well, you were right, Woody. You were never seen again.
Until this point, most of the characters we've been looking over have been annoying, gross, and forgettable, but hardly offensive in any way. It was nice while it lasted. Meet Zero the Kamikaze Squirrel. Let's just ignore the obvious thing wrong with his name for a moment and talk about Zero himself. Zero spun off from the Sega Genesis title Aero the Acrobat, where he served the role of the rival to Aero. Now, during the 80s and 90s, there seemed to be this large obsession with ninjas. Well, to be fair, they're still pretty big with kids these days if Lego Ninjago is anything to go by. But there seemed to be this real lack of understanding ninjas when it came to the decades of past, with them just being this cool angry guy that just jumped around and threw shit. Zero is the embodiment of that, mixed in with the mascot with attitude trope. Despite how hardcore Zero is, the plot he finds himself thrown into is rather tame. His girlfriend calls him home because a lumberjack is cutting down the forest to make counterfeit money. Yeah, Zero needs to protect the sanctity of the US dollar. Now let's circle back to Zero's name. The Kamikaze were part of the Japanese Special Attack Units, who initiated suicide attacks against Allied naval vessels during World War II. It built upon the tradition of death over capture or defeat, something that was deeply ingrained in the Japanese military, and even went as far back to the Bushido Code of Samurai. Putting this in the title of a kid-friendly game that seems to just barely make an attempt to showcase Japanese culture in a tasteful way is kinda fucked up, especially since the first level of the game starts with Zero flying in a plane with an image of the red sun painted on it before he's shot down. It's not like they just threw the word in there without realizing what it meant. Many kamikaze wore a headband called a hachimaki, which symbolized endurance. Zero also wears a hachimaki. In the end, Zero is just an amalgamate of what some American dude in the 90s thought of when he heard the word Japan. Ninjas, kamikazes, and Bruce Lee noises. And Bruce Lee is Chinese.
Bubsy, now available on Sega Mega Drive. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah. What could possibly go wrong and all that? Look, we've been over Bubsy. We've talked about him quite a bit in our worst animated game adaptations video. But while we focus mainly on his failed TV pilot then, today we're going to be diving into the deep mythology of Bubsy. Created by Michael Berlin of Accolade, Bubsy was inspired, of course, by Sonic the Goddamn Hedgehog, which Berlin reportedly played over 14 hours a day. The first Bubsy game was actually met with pretty decent reviews and sold fairly well. It wasn't until the second game that things got really bad after Berlin left the company. The team left to make the sequel absolutely hated Bubsy. They openly admitted that they don't care about the quality. They strung Bubsy dolls from the ceilings as though they were executing the poor cat, and repeating Bubsy one-liners to each other over and over again. While you may think that the games are only good when Michael Berlin was involved, think again. He returned to work on Bubsy 3D, considered the absolute worst game in the series, and some consider it to be one of the worst games of all time. Bubsy had potential at one point, a very, and I mean very small amount of potential, but they flew way too close to the one-liner sun. And when you get legendary voice actor Rob Paulsen to actually regret playing your character, you know you done fucked up.
Annoyed hates hot quality pizza. He loves to make your hot pizza ice cold.
Look at this ugly fuck. Does he make you want to eat pizza? Do you even want to think about eating when you look at this thing? Meet the Noid, the official mascot of Domino's Pizza. He was apparently created as the physical manifestation of all the challenges inherent in getting a pizza delivered in 30 minutes or less. The Noid just downright hated pizza, and he would do whatever he could to ruin them or make them completely inedible. However, none of his attempts could bring down the godlike status of Domino's Pizza. At least, not in their commercials. The Noid starred in a few video games and even almost had his own kids show, but CBS turned it down due to it being an obvious advertising ploy. The first of the Noid games was called Avoid the Noid, which put you in the shoes of a pizza delivery boy who had to deliver pizzas around an apartment complex while avoiding all sorts of Noids. His next game was way more noteworthy, being created by none other than Capcom. Titled Yo Noid, this time around the Noid was the hero trying to stop the evil Mr. Green from destroying New York. For some reason, the mayor calls upon the Noid to stop him. Not the law enforcement or a superhero or literally anyone else. just the Noid. The game was surprisingly not shit, but that's mostly because it didn't start out as a Noid game, but rather a game as, Kamen no Ninja Hanemaru, which had just had the Domino's branding slapped on top of it when it was brought over to the Western audiences. A fan-made sequel was released in 2017, and it took the series into a 3D platformer era. It's a shitpost of a game, but a surprisingly good one at that. Sadly, the Noid wasn't long for this world and was quietly discontinued in the late 90s. But why? On January 30th, 1989, a schizophrenic man named Kenneth Lamar Noid held 2 Domino's employees hostage at an Atlanta location for over 2 hours. Noid thought that the ads featuring the fictional Noid character were a personal attack on him, due to having the same name as the character. During the hostage situation, he forced the employees to make him a special pizza and a salad, made demands of $100,000, a form of getaway transportation, and a copy of the book The Widow's Son. Aside from the pizza and salad, none of this happened, and Noid surrendered to the police. He was charged with kidnapping, aggravated assault, extortion, and possession of a firearm during a crime, but was found not guilty by reason of insanity. After spending 3 months in a mental institution, Noid committed suicide in 1995, leading Domino's to discontinue the Noid character entirely. And that's the story of the Noid, a pizza-hating creep in a rabbit suit who went on to cause a hostage and a suicide. He's made very small appearances since, but it's very doubtful the Noid will ever take up the mantle of the Domino's mascot again.